You're listening to the NVus Alien Podcast with your host, Heather Woodward, an award-winning psychic, supernatural author, and lover of all things true crime. On this show, we're going to deep dive into topics that don't usually see the light of day. The spooky, the weird, the macabre, the paranormal, and of course, aliens. Sit back, grab a cup of tea, and let's get on with the show.
I'm just sitting here doom-scrolling and listening to the NVus Alien Podcast, living my best paranormal-obsessed life, when I remembered Heather does tarot readings. So naturally, I had to hit her up because I was obsessing over whether this guy was going to ghost me for the third time this month, and also pretty convinced my boss is a cryptid. She pulled the cards, spilled the interdimensional tea, and gave me exactly the tough love I needed. 13 out of 10. Would let her roast my future again. Book your phone chat or text reading at www.heatherashera.com. That's HeatherAshera.com, or text her at 252-241-9447. Trust me, your delusions will thank you later.
Hey everybody, welcome to the NVus Alien Podcast. This is Heather, and Stephanie's here again, and we are talking about something completely different. This is nothing in conspiracy theory. We're going to be talking about the Gabby Petito case. In February, there was a new Netflix series that came out about it, and it made us remember something that we had done together in 2021, and we want to go back to it because I think it's really important to talk about it, and it has to do with, strangely enough, psychic abilities and how psychic abilities work. What do you remember about it, Steph?
About the case or about our reading?
All of it.
I don't watch a lot of mainstream media. I only got bits and pieces about the case and the events that were happening. Really, my first interaction with the case was doing the true crime reading that you wanted to do. And so then we all got together and started pulling cards and trying to determine where Brian Laundrie was, because Gabby's body had been found. We knew that she had been strangled and he was missing. We thought we would use our abilities and see if we could find out where he was.
And for those who don't know who Gabby Petito is, she was a 20-something who went van lifing with her boyfriend, and he came back with her van and went to his parents' house and then didn't talk to her parents or anybody and got a lawyer right away. Her body was found, I think, 3 weeks later, strangled, and then he ran away and went into the Everglades and basically shot himself, allegedly. And I say allegedly because that goes back to some of the things that were in the Netflix documentary that we're going to talk about. Anything else that I left out? I'm trying to give like a very short synopsis of it because that's a whole other podcast.
You can watch the Netflix documentary or read any of the articles about the case, because there are several.
We were trying to get the timeline correct because it's been 4 years since we did this.
Hey, this is Future Heather, and I did create a timeline so that it's a little easier to understand what happened with the Gabby Petito case if you haven't seen the Netflix documentary or you haven't followed this case like a crazy psychopath like I have. Here is the breakdown of what happened. Gabby Petito was a 22-year-old travel vlogger from Long Island, and she wanted to live the van life. And she saved up a bunch of money working, and then she bought a converted 2012 Ford Transit Connect. And she was going to go on the road with her fiance, Brian Laundrie. July 2nd, 2021, the couple leaves Florida for a month-long van life road trip. They hit national parks, and they shared a lot of stuff on Instagram. They only shared the good stuff though. But behind the scenes, they weren't doing very well. They were testing the boundaries of the relationship, and it wasn't all what you saw on Instagram. Brian especially was not happy with the situation. So on August 12th, this is like a month later, in Moab, Utah, a witness reports Laundrie slapping Petito. They call the police. The police body cam shows Gabby crying, admitting that she slapped him too. They're separated for the night, and no charges were filed, but there's like a lot of controversy around it because it seems like the police pretty much sided with Laundrie because Gabby was crying and she seemed a little hysterical, but she was very emotional about this situation. No charges were filed, nothing really happened, and you can watch the body cam video on YouTube, and you can see right away there's a situation where Laundrie knows how to talk his way out of things, but he is probably the abuser and the instigator. Anybody who's been a survivor of domestic abuse recognizes the signs. August 25th is Gabby's last known contact. She texts her mom, and then that's her final Instagram post, which is really odd for her because she used to post all the time. So on August 27, there's the last footage of Gabby alive. It's seen in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and it's captured on a CCTV. They're walking around in the Whole Foods. August 27th to August 30th, Laundrie's phone and Gabby's are used after her disappearance. All the funds are withdrawn from her debit card, and it's suspected that Laundrie is the one that is doing all of this. On September 1st, Laundrie returns back to Northport, Florida with Gabby's van. He just shows up without her. He doesn't talk. His parents ask the police to direct questions to their lawyer. It's really weird because he comes back, the police show up at their house, and again, more body cam footage so you can actually see it. If you go on the Netflix documentary, all of this is documented. Then you can see the whole thing, the whole timeline. But anyway, he goes to his parents' house with the van. Something happens there. We don't know what. The police come and his parents just say, "We're not talking to anybody." They've already lawyered up. On September 11th, Gabby's mom reports her missing. 4 days later, Laundrie is named a person of interest, and they're trying to figure out what happened to her. And of course, Laundrie and his family are like, "Nope, we're not talking. Talk to our lawyer." Like, they lawyered up so quick, which is fine, but like, at least give the family a little bit of, "Hey, we don't know what really happened," or like, just don't stonewall the family. That's just ridiculous. Anyway, human remains are found at Spread Creek in Bridger-Teton National Forest, Wyoming. The autopsy showed that Gabby Petito died by homicide by blunt force and strangulation. On September 23rd, FBI issues an arrest warrant for Laundrie over the unauthorized use of Gabby's debit card. September 13th through 17th, Laundrie vanishes from home. Parents report him missing after they say he disappeared. On September 13th, police earlier mixed him up with his mom during a surveillance, so they thought he was walking around, but it was actually his mom. September 13th through 17th is important to the rest of this podcast because this is the time frame that we are talking about. So basically, he just disappears. Nobody knows where he went. Nobody knows where he's going. His parents, of course, aren't helping at all. They don't want to have anything to do with it. There's this big, long search on October 20th, like around that time, in the Florida Nature Reserve. Investigators find Laundrie's remains and belongings. They found a diary. They found some writings. But the body is really decomposed because it's really hot there. But it says dental records confirm it's him. His parents found him. They knew right where to look. It's very strange. Gabby Petito's mom actually thinks that Laundrie's parents killed their son, and that's why they knew where the body was, because they would rather have him dead than live life in jail, and all evidence was going towards him killing Petito. Also, in an interview, she said that one of the things that was missing from the van was the mattress, and all of her belongings were put into a closet. November 23rd, 2021, forensics exam reveals Laundrie died from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. On January 2022, FBI releases journal entries from a notebook found with Laundrie. In it, he confesses to killing Gabby. He didn't really confess. He made up a story that doesn't align with what actually happened. What the autopsy showed and what Laundrie said were two different things. So this case blew up on social media like big time because of the domestic violence situation and that body cam in Moab. Again, people were very touchy about it because it's obvious that Laundrie had some kind of issue and was actually probably the perpetrator. Gabby's family filed a wrongful death lawsuit. They filed one against Laundrie's estate and parents, and they settled for $3 million in 2022. And then another $50 million suit versus the Moab police over that incident because they should have recognized the signs of domestic abuse. The Moab one got dismissed due to Utah's sovereign immunity, and the family is appealing. The Netflix documentary is called American Murder, Gabby Petito, and it was released in February of 2025. Anyway, let's get back into the podcast, and this will all make sense why I told you this, and we'll get right into it.
I am a true crime aficionado, I guess, in my spare time. I love to watch true crime stuff, and I listen to a lot of true crime documentaries. It's a weird, guilty pleasure. I know I should have better hobbies. There are certain cases that just kind of stick with me, and the Petito case, for whatever reason, really bothered me. I think it's because of the abuse aspect where he was, what's his name? I
Brian?
always Brian Laundrie, thank you. I can't even say his name because I'm so annoyed by it. But he was very abusive, but was under the radar because he had a good front. He presented as very docile, but then he was very emotionally manipulative and emotionally abusive. And there was something about him from the very beginning that I just was like, ugh. There's just a feeling that you get if you're even a little bit intuitive looking at him. Did you get the same vibe, or how did you feel about him?
Yeah, I had the same thing. There's something that's not right.
If you watch the documentary, it goes more into who he was and his family life and just a little bit more about him as a person. He has a very entitled kind of personality where just because he exists, you're supposed to cater to him kind of energy.
He feels explosive to me. He's cool. You flip that switch and he's going to go off.
Anyway, in 2021, I was doing a lot of classes in psychic development, and one of the things we used to do is go through true crime stuff and see if we could figure things out. Some of the cases were older, some of them were unsolved, and some of them were solved. But it was just to get the idea of pulling from a different source and moving outside of yourself to see if you could get information. And so we had a few people on this call, and it was shortly before he was found. He basically went out in Florida. So, it's all there's woods there, but it's also very like swampy. And he went out to this place that he's used to hiking. He wrote this note and journaled and basically lied about how Gabby died and then allegedly shot himself. We were trying to figure out where he was or if he was alive because there were a lot of sightings of him a lot of different places. And we decided that it was the weekend of 2 or 3 days before he was found, and he was found on October 20th. So it had to be that weekend before he was found. He was found on a Wednesday. From the timeline that we just chronicled from articles, it was that because I know we usually did stuff on the weekends. So it would be a Saturday, Sunday, or a Monday, and he was found on that Wednesday. This video, do you remember anything about it?
I remember we started pulling cards, and then our friend Rachel went and found his human design chart and started going through his chart and talking about the centers and how he didn't know when enough was enough. And because of the way that his chart is, that it would have been really easy for him to get carried away and strangle her or do more than he intended. And then from there, we started pulling more cards about trying to find where he might be and if he was still alive or dead.
I don't remember her doing that.
I don't remember what all she was talking about, but I do remember that. So I think she was just looking at the centers to see what was defined and undefined.
I don't know anything about human design. How did you feel about his chart?
Honestly, when she was talking, I remember hearing her talk and points, but I didn't pull up the chart. I didn't look at it. So I was just letting her do her thing. I know I pulled cards. What I remember is most of what we were getting, he wasn't dead. He was still alive.
Yeah, this is where the idea of this podcast came from because it's weird how this happens. And it's something that I want to talk about because it happened in the election too. There was a lot of pushback from it. And so let's keep going with the story, then we're going to wrap back around. It's going to make sense here. Interestingly enough, the minute that I heard that he left his parents' house, my first thought was, he's dead. He's going to kill himself. That's the end of that. It was just a gut feeling that I had before I pulled cards or anything. I knew they weren't going to find him alive. But it's so fascinating because I didn't say that. I think I did in the very beginning of the video, and then I just left it alone because everybody got a completely different reading that he was still around.
I remember, and I still feel it, that as we were going through the reading, I sensed that he was alive and he was somewhere in like the Appalachians. Like he was going north. But that's all I got. I didn't know anything else. So then later, when they revealed that they found his body, I was like, I don't know about that. That doesn't seem right. Obviously, that is, I guess, the logical thing, right? It would be logical for him to go somewhere and kill himself. And it makes sense that they would find that. But there was still part of me that's, yeah, I don't think it was really him. Because my feeling and intuition that he was alive and he was going north was way stronger than him being dead.
Yeah, and everybody else on that, I think there was you, me, Rachel, there was like 2 other people, and I can't remember who it was. Everybody had the same consensus, which is, yeah, he's not dead. He's going somewhere. And I remember around that same time, there were a lot of sightings of him going north. There were a lot of sightings of him in places outside of Florida. And then, strangely enough, and this is a really weird detail that I still can't get my brain around, but do you know who found his body?
Wasn't it his parents?
Yeah, his parents walked right up to where he was, like they knew. Which either means they knew where he was the whole time and didn't say anything, or they had a really good sneaky suspicion of where he would go and just didn't say anything, or it was planted. I'm not saying that it was planted, but it is a really strange detail. Like, why would his parents know where he is, knowing that his mom wrote a letter to him and said, burn this after you read it, which he didn't do, that basically said, I would do anything for you. If you killed somebody, I would bury the body for you, etc., etc. So she didn't care whether he was guilty or not.
This reminds me a lot about that case that we did the reading on about the girl in California that disappeared.
Which one?
The one where the parents made like the basketball court, or put some sort of pavement in the backyard.
This is not ringing any bells.
And she was a college girl, and she like went home with the guy. And then she disappeared, and they could never prove it was him. His parents were interfering. They like did some sort of cement work in their backyard not long after the investigation.
I know who you're talking about. Yes. This is a lot like that case. What is her name? Hold on. It's San Luis Obispo. They didn't do a basketball court, but the body was allegedly in his backyard and they covered it up and they made a patio. They actually just convicted him
Oh, really?
last year.
How did they do that?
DNA. Kristen Smart is her name. Paul Flores was the killer. Yes, his parents completely kept interfering. He was sentenced to 25 years to life because they had so much evidence that he had done this to other people. And there was some DNA evidence that showed up around her. And even though they didn't find the body, they found enough stuff. And also, the dad went to jail for a little while for interference.
But anytime you talk about the parents, I always think about that case in relation to the Gabby Petito case.
Yeah, because his parents didn't care if he did it or not. I'm sorry, I thought it was last year. It was in March 10th, 2023 is when he was sentenced. That's another thing that really bothers me about this case is why would he go and kill himself?
Obviously, he had no remorse because he took her van and drove across the country. So why would you just go kill yourself?
And he took money out of her account too,
Yeah.
to pay for the trip back.
Yeah. Because if he was just going to kill himself because he felt guilty, he could have done that anywhere.
And he wrote a goodbye letter to her or something, or a goodbye text saying that something about how he took the money and that was the end of it. They're square or something like that. This whole case is so freaking weird. And then you were reading up on the strangulation aspect of it. In Moab, they were stopped by the police because he slapped her and they got into an argument on the side of the road and then they let them go. And they put her in the hotel and let him stay in the van and made it seem like it was her fault.
Because she admitted to slapping him. So they tried to frame it as she was the abuser. But in this article, what they're discussing is all of the mistakes that the police department made. And it's like a review of those and trying to give them recommendations on what they can do better in the future, since it was not handled well at all. It says there's several things here that they did not do. Like, they never reported that Laundrie struck Petito. They never contacted the 911 caller that reported it. It says here, Reeves said the officers, quote, twisted themselves into knots to try to avoid an arrest because their sympathy for the couple, stating that Pratt deliberately tried to coach Petito to answer questions about her intent in hitting Laundrie in a way that would allow Pratt to avoid arresting her. And it says Reeves also noted that the officers did not follow up with any questions about how Petito sustained her injury to Laundrie. And as they address the errors, it says Laundrie reportedly grabbing Petito's face in an attempt to calm her down was, quote, an extremely personal, violent, and controlling act, Ratcliffe writes. Even though it didn't cause significant injury, it could have been indication that Laundrie was the long-term predominant aggressor in their relationship, according to Ratcliffe. Solis with the State Domestic Violence Coalition said that bidirectional violence is common in abusive relationships. And there are times when someone who has been a victim, short or long term, responds in the same manner in which their abuser treats them, an act that is more commonly known as self-defense or violence resistance. And it says in some of these instances, short or long term victims may be legally considered and subsequently charged as the predominant physical aggressor. But because they were not familiar with the behavioral health and the domestic violence protocols that they probably should have been, they didn't recognize those warning signs when they were investigating the couple.
If you watch the video, and I'll put the video in the show notes, they were like chumming it up with him, like making it seem like she's just some scary, crazy bitch. That was hysterical. It's cringy to watch it. It just feels so much like they're siding with him and he's putting on this act like, yeah, I have to put up with this. It's very triggering to watch because he knows exactly what to say and how to act to make it seem like it's not what it is.
Right.
Which makes you think he's done it before or he's been groomed in this way to think that kind of behavior is okay. To the point where it even seemed like she believed it, that whatever he was doing was okay. Isn't strangulation a very personal kind of way to kill somebody?
I used to get emails from the Institute of Strangulation Prevention because I took HOPE training through their partner organization. And they always want to draw attention to strangulation because if somebody is a strangler, then they're more likely to escalate and kill somebody. Their big thing is helping to bring awareness to law enforcement that if somebody has the tendency to strangle, then the statistics for the victim to die go up significantly. There's like major warning signs in those types of relationships and those issues that really need to be addressed before it escalates to the point where we have another Gabby Petito case.
Going back around to what this is about, I think one of the reasons why everybody was so adamant about him running away is because the likelihood of him just going and killing himself seemed very minor because he was being so protected by his family. He didn't seem like the kind of person that felt guilty just because basically he took her van, left her on the side of the road, and then didn't talk to her parents at all didn't even mention that she was missing and went on with his life like nothing happened. When they found him 2 or 3 days later, were you surprised?
It didn't feel right. I was a little surprised when you said it, but then at the same time, I wasn't surprised because, like I said, it's the logical next step, right? That he would disappear and then you'd find his body. Even now, it doesn't sit right. There's something off about that scenario.
My first instinct was so correct. So, where did we go wrong? We have a bunch of psychics in a room, intuitives. We're all different. We all have very psychic abilities. We all work in this field. And at any given time, everybody either does readings, did readings, or has had some kind of successful business in this field. So we're not talking about people who have no track record. And in my head, I thought about this for days. Like, how did we get it so wrong? Because even my cards showed that there was going to be some shenanigans, that he might be alive. So I was like, okay, why did the cards go so wonk? My first initial reaction was just, he's dead. But like you said, that's a logical conclusion. It's just an instinctual thing. But I often wonder what happens in those moments. I was thinking, was it just group? It's the hive mind thing where one person says it and you're like, oh, that sounds right. And then the cards just go along with it. Maybe. But I'm usually not that susceptible to it. I'm pretty adamant about keeping my vision on things because a lot of times someone will say something to me and I'll be like, no, that's not how I feel about it. And ride or die with my thoughts. Even though sometimes they're wrong. What about you? Are you someone who hive minds? Or are you somebody that really just sticks to your guns?
I think it depends on the situation, but there's a lot of times that what I say is completely different than what everybody else says. And then later you're like, oh, that's why she said that.
True.
But I remember when we were talking about it after they found his body, and we were discussing how do we get it so wrong? I think one of the ideas was we were pulling from the collective idea, like the collective drama, and not necessarily reading the actual situation.
Oh, yeah. So we're reading from all the conjecture of to where he was.
That was the idea, is we were tapping into that, which was also confusing because we normally don't connect into that, especially us as a collective. We usually don't do that.
Because usually the energy of us when we're doing readings is stronger than the collective energy. There's an amplifying effect that happens when you're around a lot of psychic people. And a lot of times that will carry through. It'll be the carryover that will get you through the universal chatter. Yeah, it was confusing to me because I'm like, why do we pick up on all of the theories around this? How did that happen?
I put Brian Laundrie's birth date and for a chart, which I don't know the time of birth. So I had to play around with different times to see what really changes. And not much changes. I'm pretty sure he was a projector, emotionally defined. But he is a Scorpio. We know that because he was born November 18th. But his incarnation cross is a right angle cross of contagion, which I know well because that is mine also. And it's very passionate. I see how he could be charismatic and have people just get on his side and go with his ideas. He has an open sacral, so he isn't going to know when enough is enough, and he's going to continue. And with that emotional volatility since he's emotionally defined for his authority, then yeah, things could escalate really fast. And he has a defined spleen, which is very instinctual, which would make sense for if he's in a heightened emotional state and doesn't know how to stop or cool himself down, that he could lash out and do what he did. So yeah, I would have to agree with what Rachel said back then, just from what I remember.
It's a very intense kind of situation because she's a Pisces, and if he's a Scorpio, I could see how she could be very attached to him and attracted to him and not even know why. There's some kind of deeper instinctual need to be with him. They're like two intense water signs coming together and then amplifying each other's intensity. I could see how they're like, yeah, let's travel the world together. Like being in the illusion and thinking it's going to be all perfect, but then not really knowing what to do with each other when things get bad, because it's a very love-hate kind of relationship.
As I look at this chart, since I don't have his birth time, so we can't be 100% confident, but his unconscious Mars is in gate 28, which I don't see that. Mars probably changed through the day because it doesn't change that fast. If it was in the moon, then that would be different because the moon is constantly moving and changing. So 28 is struggle. Here's what the little blurb says. The impetuous energy residing in the unconscious Mars is what you activate physically when you find yourself in a disagreement. So he is designed to fight and to struggle. There's another underlying, I guess, flaw in his makeup. So you combine all of that, and that's just a recipe for disaster for somebody that's living out of their shadow.
Yeah, and I'm sure his family just being okay with anything or whatever he does, that didn't help the situation. No discernment whatsoever. Whereas she was very much about, I'm going to work, I'm going to make the money, I'm going to have my dream, I'm going to make it happen. It's a totally different energy where he expects someone to do it for him. You can see the causticness of this because you have one person that's willing to work for everything, and then you have another person that's willing to take.
Two emotional water signs that are going to fight.
Yeah. And then they go on a road trip in this very small, tiny area, and then they're stuck with each other. I could see how that could be a recipe for disaster. Now we're back in 2025 and we're in February, and I'm watching the Netflix documentary, which I wasn't going to watch. It's interesting how this plays out. Not because I'm not interested, but because I'm like, I've already seen this, I've already been through it. My cards were completely wrong. Everybody's cards were completely wrong. I don't want to touch this. You know what I mean? There's nothing in this documentary that I probably haven't heard before because I've been through the gamut with this one. I've watched too many documentaries already. But then I'm on TikTok and everyone's, have you seen the new Gabby Petito Netflix documentary? I don't think Brian Laundrie is dead. And I'm like, wait, what? I'm scrolling through and I'm finding more and more of these videos because if you're on TikTok, if you listen to one video on a subject, then they give you a ton more videos on that subject. Yesterday, I had the misfortune of watching a video on the viral Dubai chocolate. I was trying to figure out what the filling was, and it's pistachio, by the way. But because I watched that video, I got to watch 20 other videos about fucking pistachio, and I don't care. But anyway, I ended up watching all of these videos about how everyone thinks that Brian Laundrie is alive and that his family planted a body. And I'm like, what? So I watched the documentary. There isn't a lot of new information in it, by the way. There's some text in it and some new people and just some little new information about how the bodies were found. And a lot of video from the police when they interviewed the families. And you can clearly see that Brian Laundrie's family basically said fuck off, I'm warring up, and then didn't talk to police at all. So they were protecting him from the very start. But as you're watching it, I could totally see how after watching that, people don't think that he's dead at all. And I don't know if it's the editing, if they were even alluding to it, but just after going through all this stuff with the family, you come to the conclusion that there's no fucking way that they would let their kid go out into the middle of the Everglades and kill themselves. There's no way. They were so protective of him. Why would they let him do that? This kind of drove me crazy a little bit because I was like, wait a minute. Hear me out. What if we were picking up on the future? I don't know how to explain it, especially with psychic stuff. There's no distinction in energy between the past, present, and the future. And even though people were saying, we've seen him here, we've seen him there, we've seen him there, that doesn't really matter because energetically, you're going to read the whole situation, whether you like it or not. And who knew that in 4 years' time, there would be this big push or change in thought process when it comes to Brian Laundrie and whether or not he was dead. We could not have known that, but we certainly could have read it. You know what I mean?
If we are asking the big question, is he dead or is he alive? We're going to pick up on everything that has to do with that question.
Right.
Not just immediate circumstances.
Looking back on that reading, like you were talking about Kristen Smart, which is that one lives in my brain too. But I don't remember doing a reading about that with everybody. I don't remember even talking about it. This one, because we were air quotes wrong, it stuck with me hard. And some of the things that we said are very closely related to what is being said now, which is there's no way that he would do something like that. He had to have gone somewhere. He probably wanted to start a new life. His parents would have totally catered to that because of that note. Now, we didn't know about the note during this time. The note hadn't come out yet. But all that stuff is now out and everybody has the bigger picture. And like there's a 70-30 split where people absolutely think that he went somewhere and started a new life and the family knows about it. And it's really interesting too because his family is strange, where his sister goes online and talks about how he was abused by the media and how he was abused by the Petito family, and that nobody knows the real him. And like the whole narrative has shifted with that too, where they're talking about how Gabby Petito was the instigator and how she forced him into a situation where he had to be an aggressor.
Oh, he had to be an aggressor.
Right.
Because he was the victim.
Right. she posts all the time about how there's two sides to every story and that he was very much abused by her. There seems to be this narrative shift completely with this whole situation. But I just wonder, do you think we were picking up on the future?
Or what actually happened? I'm just saying. Maybe we picked up on the truth. Yeah, it's interesting because we could be picking up on this narrative. And that could be because that's what we wanted to happen. Or maybe that timeline had already started to shift even then.
I didn't even think about it that way. The split was already starting to happen because there's two timelines going at the same time. One where he's dead and one where he's not dead. It feels so strange that I'm sitting here in 2025 and still thinking about it and still talking about it and still wondering about it. And this, where I am now, feels closer to what we were picking up on than when we were actually doing the reading.
It feels more accurate to me that they would have faked his death and he is living somewhere hidden and going on with his life.
What does that say about abilities as a whole? Like, how do we parse out the past, present, and the future in a reading?
That's a hard one because sometimes you don't even realize that you're reading a different time frame than what you think you are until after the fact and more information brings it into your awareness.
That has happened to me so many times. And it's happened to you too, where we've literally been going, okay, we get this information. What the hell does it mean? And then it doesn't mean anything until it does. And I just wonder, what does that say about free will?
I think that's where people get tripped up when they are trying to use their psychic abilities to come to an answer or a conclusion, is they're trying to put it into a narrow box of what it means or give it some sort of containment when you could be picking up on something way outside of that, and then the whole message is getting distorted because of it. I feel like there's some sort of discernment that goes into it, but you also have to step back from what you're trying to read. And what comes to mind, since I'm having problems describing this in words, is that it's not logical. It's not from language. Like all of the information you're receiving psychically is like right brained. So instead of trying to keep it in that right brain frame of reference, we try to move it into the left brain. And when we do that, I think that's where it gets mixed up. And when we try to put it into a timeline that maybe it doesn't go in. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
Okay.
What side is your right brain again? That's your...
The creative.
That's what I thought of. It's thoughts, words, pictures. It's a jumble of sight, sound, and texture that you have to figure out.
Right. So if you put too much of a filter on it, then your predictions and your ideas about what you are receiving get distorted. And then that makes it confusing, or you're giving very outlandish readings. Like Jesus is coming back in a spaceship to save the world.
Yeah. Yeah. I laugh because people really think that. But
If you haven't listened to that podcast, go find it.
we talk about that. Yeah, I think that's the misconception when it comes to psychic ability, is that it's linear or that it's something that is concrete. And you're right, it's not. It's like playing Pictionary with the universe. I think that's why people use tarot cards and use divination, is because it helps bring meaning to it. It gives it a system. It's easier to read. But then again, like in this situation, we're reading the situation, but are we reading it in the future? Are we reading it now? Where are we reading it? Because it's all the same energy. And if it's all the same energy, then we're going to pick up on every single aspect of it, not just what's in the now.
Or if you ask a question, say about a baby, and you get all this information that you think pertains to that baby, and then you find out later, oh, wrong baby, we're talking about another baby, for example, where you're asking a question and you think you're getting the information for what you're reading on, when really it's a completely different situation that has the same parameters.
Yeah, that actually happened to us. She's not making that one up.
Surprise!
That's a perfect example. I don't want to get too into the details because it's my personal life. However, we thought we were reading a situation about a baby that was very close to something that happened in the future with another baby. And it was very strange because the situations were almost identical. However, I did not know about the other situation until a month later?
Yeah.
If even, yeah.
Yeah.
But we were literally reading the situation that was going to happen, not the situation that was happening. And what is that? Is it because we asked about a baby?
It could have been not clarifying. Because if I just say, tell me about the baby, and oh, okay. I'm going to tell you about this baby in the future that doesn't even relate, but has similar energy.
Again, it's that future thing.
And that seems to be a trend I've noticed, is that we pick up on energy, and our readings seem to pull out information that isn't necessarily related to what we're asking about. It is, and we think it is at the time, but then we find out later we're actually pulling from another situation in the future or something that we did not know about. Because even what we've been talking about with the crescent and the information that we got at the crescent is the same thing.
Part of the crescent.
It just seems like there's all of these like overlapping ideas and these overlapping stories where we think we're reading one story, but then we're actually picking up on this other story. So even with the white lady and the girl, we were reading both of them at the same time. Or like with Theodora, like now we didn't really have an idea about why we were going to the crescent. But then now we're seeing, okay, we were directed there. And even in that first visit to the crescent, we were directed there to assist that, but we didn't understand what that was until we went back the second time. And maybe that's why I kept looking up at Theodora's room from outside, is because that's the point she was trying to get to us, is that recognition and remembrance, because she was helping them to get there.
Yes, so we're going to have to go back and tell people what we're talking about. Let's do a little recap. Let's give the short version.
Okay, so in 2021, a group of us went to the Crescent Hotel in Eureka Springs, Arkansas, and had a very eventful night of ghost hunting. Then the next summer, my husband and I went on a weekend trip to Eureka Springs in the area looking at houses, and we met up with Heather and went to dinner at the Crescent, mainly just because I didn't know what else was in town. and I knew where the crescent was and it was good food. So we went there, and then we had another mini investigation and discovered more information that related to our first investigation there. And now Heather is writing a book about it, or adding it in her book.
Yes, I'm putting it all together for this section in the book that wasn't really supposed to be there in the first place. Just weird, because when I queried for it, it wasn't in the book. And at the last minute, I was like, this is going to be in the book, and I don't know why. So we're adding it. And now everything's coming together. But it took us 4 years to figure that out. I'm sitting on stuff, and the only reason why it's coming together now is because I'm having to make it make sense. Not that I'm forcing it to make sense. That's not what I'm saying. It's that in order for me to write it in a book, I have to have the narrative correct, or else there's no point. So things are coming to light. But you're right. It's another situation where we think we're reading the energy of now, but we're actually reading the energy of 2, 3, 4 years later. I don't know how this relates, but it does relate in my brain, is that part of the situation with the crescent is that there are people that need or want to be remembered. And I'm wondering if this is Gabby Petito's way of needing and wanting to be remembered. Because if we're talking about Brian Laundrie, then we're talking about her.
Right.
They're forever going to be interlocked. But even doing this podcast, we're still thinking about her and remembering her and talking about how she was abused and how this is a shitty situation and it should have gone better and the reasons why it happened. So she is forever going to be in the memory of anybody who thinks that he is alive. And it's a really strange way of not being forgotten, but it seems to be working.
Right, because if he just killed himself and he was gone, that's the end of it. And then they're both lost to history.
And it would not have stuck in my brain like it did where I'm talking about it again. There are things that stick in my brain. There are lots of things that don't, obviously. Where you're like, remember this one time? And I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? Was I there? But then there are certain things that just stick that I can't quite get out of my head. And it's usually the stuff that's important, or usually the stuff that, like, actually we come to a conclusion with it. We're like, oh, that's why. That's why.
What if that's why you're so into true crime? Because that's like your whole thing, is that's your gift, is to help these lost souls be remembered.
I do talk about them a lot. I don't mean to. But it's only certain cases too. Like a lot of cases I don't really care about. I'll watch them and I'll go, yeah, okay, whatever. But there are certain cases that just get under my skin where I'm like, no, it haunts me to this day. The girl, Elisa Lam, she climbed up the water tower.
That's the one I was going to say.
Yeah.
So,
that one, until it gets solved, and everybody says it's solved. I'm like, no fucking way, it's not. No, it sticks with me. But yeah, I never even thought of it that way. I don't know. Maybe it's some kind of weird thing where the universe is, this is what we're going to do. We're going to force this upon you. Congratulations. But it does beg the question how psychic abilities work, and how do we navigate the universe, and how do we pick up on energy, and what exactly are we picking up on? That, I don't know.
I guess that's a big question.
It is. So I gotta ask, okay, so this brings me back into like current events, which is the Trump presidency. Now, did you pull cards on it at all?
When you were having issues and it wasn't making sense, you asked us to pull some cards, and I did pull a few cards, but I don't think I got anything either. I don't remember. I wasn't getting any definite answers.
That made no sense to me either.
I had the Queen of Cups, Nine of Pentacles, Two of Swords, Queen of Swords. I think it's the Eight of Wands. Maybe it's the Seven of Wands. I can't tell. I don't remember what card that is. And then on the bottom of the deck was the Hangman.
It's a very mixed bag. That's very let it go because you're not going to get it.
Yeah, that's what I say. I'm like, I'm not getting anything. I was not getting either timeline. The Two of Swords is in the middle, so it's being at that crossroads. You're not going anywhere.
The Queen of Swords is interesting too. That's like people talking about it, people speculating about it. It's a lot of talk, but nothing being done.
I think it's supposed to be the Eight of Wands. I use the butthole deck.
The Wild Unknown.
Yes, thank you. So it's a lightning strike coming down, and then the wands are splitting. So they're all going different directions.
The card you're talking about, yeah.
There was no direction when we did these readings. When was that?
I think it was from like a couple weeks of the election, correct?
I will find the image in my photos and tell you exactly what day that was. It's the last picture in October.
Okay.
So it was towards the end of October that we did the reading.
Yeah. So it was very close to the election, and even then it wasn't set in stone, which is really weird because if you would think, if you're like, what's the election, November 4th, November 5th?
Yeah, something like that.
It was November 4th this year, I believe. But 4 or 5 days out, we should have a pretty good idea what's going on. I just remember in previous years, we always pull cards and it seemed very straightforward. This one was very strange. But it wasn't just us. A lot of people online, and there's this whole thing and this whole discourse about it because people online were like, no, Kamala's going to win because I just don't see Trump as president. And I'm like, yeah, I don't see anybody as president, really. Sure. The energy was so off, and it's still off. And I go over all those readings. If you want to hear about how me whinge about it, I have 2 podcasts about it with all of the cards and all of the explanations. And I go through every little detailed aspect of it because it bothers me that much. What I'm thinking now, and I was going to ask you about this, is do you think the reason why we couldn't see Trump as president is because he's not really president? He is, in theory. He's in the seat, right? Is he really president?
Is he really calling the shots and acting as president?
Yeah.
That's a good question. Maybe we should pull cards on that.
I wonder, is the reason we can't see him as president is the same thing that's happening with the Gabby Petito and with the Crescent and all these other things we're talking about? Is it because there's some kind of future event that's going to change it? Or is it because, like with Trump, we find out about the NAR, we find out about the 7M movement, we find out about Elon Musk, and then I don't know how many times he said that he rigged the election. I think we're at 4 times now. He keeps telling everybody he did it. Maybe that's the confusion. Even as I'm talking right now, there's some kind of future event that's going to be like, oh, that's it right there.
When you said, oh, there's a future event, I'm like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. I don't know what that's about. But let's see. I've got a deck of cards right here. I'm going to start with the So Below deck. See if we can get some practical information. If not, we can go to the As Above deck and see if that can tell us anything about the overarching energy. So what are we reading? Like this future event or what's going on?
Yeah, we can read that. And then I think we should look at Brian Laundrie one more time. Let's do the Trump thing first because I don't think people on the internet are wrong. I don't think psychics are wrong. I don't think I'm wrong. I think we're all picking up on something that is about to come that we don't know about yet. There's all this talk about how like you can't trust astrologers and you can't trust psychics anymore on TikTok. And I'm all, That's not true. We just don't have all the answers yet. We don't have the information. Yes, we got the election wrong, but in 2 or 3 years, are we going to be wrong still?
There was definitely some sort of shift where the perspective changed from Biden and Kamala to Trump.
Yeah.
And I don't know what that shift was or who or what made that decision, but there definitely was an energetic shift. We just had to wait it out, see what's coming.
Yeah, and I think that's the issue, is that we want these like results really quickly, and so now everyone's, you can't trust psychics or tarot readers on TikTok, and I'm like, you're missing the point. Anyway, I'm just using a regular Rider-Waite deck. That was the first thing I saw.
What question specifically?
The energy of the election, was that good or is that too broad?
Now that we're past it, maybe we can get an answer. What happened with it?
Yeah, I'm curious to know what you got.
9 of Chalices, Ace of Wands, the Devil, Judgment, and 10 of Wands.
What does that mean to you?
To me, the 9 of Cups is about celebration and accomplishment. On this card is a birthday party, and people are like celebrating and blowing out candles and drinking wine, right? I think the outcome was what was supposed to happen. For whatever reason, people were happy. There's a lot of people that were celebrating. Ace of Fire, Ace of Wands. So I think the idea that Trump has was meant to be something good. But there's been some manipulation that has come in and overtaken that. Because then we have the Judgment and the 10 of Wands. Whatever has happened has overwhelmed the system. And with all of the changes and the layoffs, everything that they're doing, like the consequences aren't being thought through because of whatever they think the end game, let's see, justice. I think they're trying to balance something out and rewrite something or make it a right. Yeah, the wheel. Yeah, so whoever has taken control and taken over, there's somebody, I think, in his inner circle, whether that's Musk or that's somebody else, they're in there, they're manipulating things and they're changing things around because they feel like whatever they're doing is righting some wrong that has happened. But in reality, it's just destroying everything and it's adding undue burdens to our experience. Bottom of the deck's the Emperor. There's somebody behind the scenes pulling the strings.
It's not Trump, though, yeah?
No, it's somebody else.
That explains the idea. I don't see him as being the president.
Well,
I got the 9 of Wands, the Strength card, the 5 of Swords, the 7 of Cups, and the 8 of Wands. The 9 of Wands is like a battle, a wounded ego, or a loss of some kind. The whole point of the card is like, hey, you feel like you've lost, but don't worry. Look at where you came from, so you didn't really lose. There's more ahead. It's a loss for now. Which alludes to the fact that there's something else coming up. Strength card is patience. It's, you're not seeing the whole picture. You haven't got all the information yet, so chill. 5 of Swords, though, is like degradation. It's everybody out for themselves. It's you're being shown one thing, but that's not actually what's happening. A lot of two-facedness with that. Seven of Cups means that there's too many people in the pot. You have too many chefs right now. And then the Eight of Wands is, hey, it's all going to right itself and it's going to make sense here in a minute. All it's saying to me is that there's information that's coming. The energy is too off right now. It's like a slingshot where you're pulling back, but there has to be the equal and opposite effect. It's going to come back around.
You could read my cards that way too, with Justice in the Wheel.
It goes in tandem with yours because you're saying somebody else is calling the shots, and I got that Seven of Cups, which is too many chefs. There's too many people muddying the water.
I've been exploring this idea because the whole world is throwing a temper tantrum right now over this whole tariff thing. And I can't decide if it's because Trump is setting boundaries, there's a reaction to the boundaries. Because if he's right and it hasn't been equal going both ways, you set a boundary, people are going to throw a fit and they're going to react. And we see that with the whole world throwing a temper tantrum over not buying American and pulling out. But then at the same time, Trump is Trump and he's doing his thing. But then there's a bunch of companies that are coming in from other countries and they're pledging millions and billions of dollars to work in America. What's really going on? Are people wanting to be here to build our infrastructure and build us up, or are they all rejecting us? And to me, it is like the same thing we did to Russia with the sanctions.
Yeah.
So is the whole world seeing us as Russia now? As a Trump?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because there's this persona of Trump, and so everybody's reacting just like they reacted to Putin, or they do. But in reality, neither one of them are really representative of the country.
They're just representative of what they want, and their little egos and what they're doing. Right. Yeah. I could see that.
Yeah. I don't know. That's what I've been exploring. I'm like, okay, so where, like what you were saying with the Seven of Cups, and there's too many people in the pot. Like, I think that may be why we had this security breach that we did, is because there's too many people trying to call the shots and too many people trying to be in there and telling Trump what to do. And just as an aside, Trump is a manifesting generator, which means that he's going to make mistakes and he goes through things and puts things into action really fast because he's trying to find shortcuts to make things easier. But when you do that, things get left out. So then you have to backtrack and fix it. Unfortunately for us, that is affecting everybody and not just him at this point.
From these cards, it just feels like things are going to right itself. It's all going to come to light.
I'll use this other deck and see what it tells us on a higher energetic level. We can tell what's going on. We have the Eight of Water, the Three of Air, the Nine of Air, Three of Fire, which is Venus, and the Ten of Air. Tarot cards. Okay, so Nine of Air here in the middle has to do with Odin. There's a big tree with the noose.
Usually that's the hangman. That's weird.
Yeah. So what does it say? Why is it the Nine of Air? Let's see. Runes is what it's supposed to be. Great wisdom, but by the way of suffering and sacrifice. The Three of Air is a crystal ball, which kind of reflects Venus and the Pearl on the other side, which is a Three of Fire. I don't know. I don't get these. The Eight of Cups, which is usually about walking away, but she's stirring a cauldron. Magic and transformation. Okay, so we have the cauldron, magic and transformation, alchemy, going into crystal ball, perception, images, and then your knowledge could be good or bad, but you may also be sacrificing something to know the answer. Then we have Venus or Aphrodite, attraction. I don't think it wants to tell us. That's what I'm getting.
Isn't that interesting?
Oh, you want the answer, but that answer may come at a price.
You might not like
Right.
the answer.
You might not like the answer. It's very attractive. And then we got the Ten of Air at the end, which is somebody with tarot cards reading. Yeah, you can try with your little cards. But do you really want to know the answer? The next card is Four of Water. And it is a woman standing on the side of a well, fire in one hand and a white liquid in her other hand. So I have a feeling this is supposed to be Bridget? Plus a healing of some sort. While there's a bit of pain involved, long run promises relief and smooth sailing. So same thing. Do you really want to know? You can try, but it's all going to work itself out. These are growing pains.
I think it's one of those things where a year from now, or even by the end of this year, we're going to know. It's going to all make sense. I don't think all the information has come out yet. I think there's going to be something. I don't know. It's a future event.
Which could be why I got all of the air cards. That could be why I'm getting all of the different types of divination.
What you're doing right now is what I do all the time. I look at the cards and I go, I don't know what this says. And I'm like, bro, I've been reading cards for the good part of 35 years. Why does this not make sense to me? Let's pull one more card and then we should wrap this up about whether or not Brian Laundrie is actually dead.
Okay.
That should be a lot easier to read.
It should be, yes.
What'd you get?
Six of Cups, Eight of Wands, High Priestess, Ten of Swords, and the Ace of Swords.
What does that mean to you?
And I got the King of Wands on the bottom, so it's most definitely talking about him. I think he's still alive.
I hate to say it, but the cards I got said the same thing.
I think he's with family somewhere. I think there's other family members that are hiding him. Because the Six of Chalices or Six of Cups in this is like a mom and her kids like having a tea party. And that's followed by the Eight of Wands. So it was something done quickly. So I think other family members or even maybe his parents got him out of there fast. This High Priestess card, it has a moon and then it's a woman standing up next to an illusion, like a mirror image illusion of herself. The Ten of Swords is a phoenix. I think they moved him really fast and he has some sort of alias or he's taken on some sort of persona and living a different life somewhere.
So weird. So effing weird. Even to this day, it still comes up the same way. I got the Eight of Wands too, which is like fast travel, moving quickly, getting him out quickly. I bet you anything he's in Canada. That's why you guys kept saying north. I remember somebody saying he's in Canada. Ace of Cups, new life, new beginning. Two of Wands. It's another identity. Two identities, shifting identities, moving on to something else, a new life. Eight of Swords, feeling trapped by it. Page of Cups. That is a message about it, or ideas of it, or him making an appearance, or some kind of news around it, or it could just be the talk of the Netflix documentary and people on TikTok and all that. It makes me think that people aren't too far off from the truth. And it's interesting because I'm looking at it and I'm like, I'm not reading the energy of the conjecture. I know I'm not. Am I just reading the energy of TikTok? Let's see. Queen of Cups. Nope. Queen of Cups is you're being a psychic person. You're not being a conjecture person. After all of these years, 4 years later, we're still coming up with this exactly the same conclusion.
Nothing has changed.
Except for the narrative. People just caught up. That's weird.
Why?
It just is. It is interesting because we read Brian Laundrie really quickly. When we asked about Trump, it was like, hold on, let me pull in all of my guides and all the energy from the universe because I don't know what the fuck is going on here.
I know. Let's consult the book. What do these mean?
Yeah, it's different energy. All right.
Brian Laundrie's alive somewhere.
Right? I think all I want to say is that just because you think you're wrong, it doesn't mean that it is. You might be picking up on something future oriented. You might be picking up on something you just don't know yet. So wait things out a little bit before you decide.
Your journal is your friend. Yeah. Write it down.
Yeah, write it
because
down.
You're going to go back in 3 years and be like, oh, that's what that meant.
You got to let this stuff like marinate a little bit. Like being psychic doesn't mean you have the answers right away. It just means that sometimes you have to let it all come together. Yeah. All right, everybody. See you on the flip side.